In other parts of the galaxy, fleets that had been involved in the test returned to their home worlds. The alien captains were silent, unsure what to say. Many were humiliated, having believed their combined forces could overwhelm a single human warship, yet they could not deny the humans' choice to spare them. It was a lesson that burned into their minds more deeply than any victory could. Among the Alera, the soft-spoken leaders expressed admiration. "They have earned respect," one said quietly. "They could have destroyed everything, yet they did not. They act not from fear but from principle." Even some of the Kreen, though angry, could not ignore the truth. The humans had proven that their power was real, yet tempered by discipline. And in the galaxy, discipline combined with strength was more valuable and more dangerous than raw power alone. On the bridge of the Rhesus, Commander Mark watched the alien fleets retreat. His officers observed the silent ships floating back to their homes. One young officer asked, "Will they attack again?" Mark shook his head. "Not today. They will think carefully before challenging us again, and they will remember our restraint. That is as important as any weapon we have." The crew understood. Humanity had survived not only by strength but by the choice to show mercy. That choice marked them as a species to be reckoned with, one that the galaxy would respect. Back in the council chamber, debates continued. Some leaders still whispered of future threats, of humans growing too powerful, but others spoke of the opportunity to work with a new species that could bring balance, not destruction, to the galaxy. Chancellor Vera stood once more, addressing the chamber. "The humans are not our enemies. They have shown restraint, power, and discipline. They demand respect, and we cannot ignore them. We must treat them carefully as equals, or risk provoking a species that will not be ignored." The chamber fell silent. The truth was clear to all. Humanity had arrived not as a weak and reckless species, but as a new power in the galaxy, capable of defending itself and showing mercy at the same time. The council's fear slowly shifted to respect, though some leaders still felt unease. Far away in the neutral zone, the Rhesus floated among the stars, silent and calm. Its presence was a reminder to all who saw it that humanity had the power to protect itself and the discipline to choose when to act. It had not been a victory in battle, but a victory in principle. Commander Mark turned to his crew. "This is only the beginning," he said. "The galaxy will test us again, but we will meet those tests as we always have, with strength and with choice." The crew nodded, understanding the weight of their mission. Humanity's message had been delivered, not with destruction, but with respect earned through restraint. Across the stars, the Council and the fleets would remember this moment for years to come. The Titan-class warship Rhesus had shown the galaxy what it meant to be human. And somewhere in the council chamber, the leaders realized that a young species had stepped forward not as a threat alone, but as a force that demanded acknowledgement, a species that would change the balance of power forever. The galaxy had changed. News of the Rhesus and its disciplined display of power spread quickly, reaching even the most distant worlds. The council, once confident in its control, now moved cautiously. Humanity had shown it could not be ignored, and every species knew that future decisions required careful thought. Chancellor Vera sat at the center of the council chamber, her silver eyes scanning the room. Representatives from dozens of species waited, each uncertain how to respond. Fear had softened into respect, though some still whispered doubts. The lesson of the Rhesus had been clear. Humanity had strength, discipline, and restraint. Any misstep could awaken their full power. Vera finally spoke. "We have witnessed what humans are capable of. Their Titan-class warship has proven strength and restraint beyond expectation. We can no longer view them as a minor species. They are a power in this galaxy, and we must treat them accordingly." The Alera counselors nodded, their faces calm but determined. "They are not reckless," one said. "They act with thought. That makes them dangerous to those who underestimate them and valuable to those who seek peace." Even the Kreen, though still uneasy, admitted the truth. Their claws tapped quietly against their desks, a sign of grudging acknowledgement. They had hoped to intimidate the humans, yet they had been humbled by the Rhesus and its disciplined crew. Outside the council chamber, fleets adjusted their positions. The disabled ships from the earlier test were repaired, and alien captains discussed the humans in hushed tones. Across systems, commanders debated whether to seek alliance or continue wary observation. One truth was clear to all. The balance of power had shifted, and humanity now commanded attention. Back in the neutral zone, the Rhesus drifted silently among the stars. Its massive hull reflected the light of distant suns, a monument to human achievement. Commander Mark stood on the bridge watching the galaxy with steady eyes. He knew this first encounter had changed everything. Humans were no longer unknown explorers. They were a force that could protect themselves and demand respect. "Reports from the Council?" Mark asked. His officer looked at him with quiet admiration. "They are cautious. Some are afraid. Some are impressed. The Rhesus is now more than a ship, it is a symbol." Mark nodded. "Good, that is what we wanted. We did not seek war, but we will not shy away from it if necessary. Let them see who we are without a single life lost." In the council chamber, discussions turned toward diplomacy. Some proposed formal talks with humanity. Others argued for continued observation. Yet even those who preferred caution understood that hostility could be disastrous. The humans had shown restraint, but they had also shown capability beyond most races' imagination. Chancellor Vera raised her hand. "We must extend an invitation. Let humanity speak to the Council. Let them explain their intentions. If we act wisely, we may gain allies instead of making enemies." The Council debated the timing and terms, but all agreed on one point. Humanity could not be ignored. They were a rising power, a species that had survived trials, built wonders, and chosen mercy over destruction. The Rhesus had not fired a single shot, yet it had left a mark deeper than any battle could. On distant worlds, alien leaders relayed the story of the Rhesus to their people. Parents spoke of the young humans who had faced overwhelming fleets and refused to destroy them. Scholars studied the technology, wondering how such a vessel could exist. Soldiers admired the discipline and restraint. Across the stars, respect for humanity grew quietly but firmly. Commander Mark and his crew understood that this was only the beginning. Humanity had made a statement, but the galaxy would continue to test them. Alliances would be sought, threats would arise, and the Rhesus would be called upon again. Yet the first encounter had set a precedent. Humanity did not strike recklessly, but it did not yield either. As the Rhesus drifted in the quiet of space, its shadow stretching across distant stars, a sense of calm authority radiated from it. It was not just a ship. It was a promise that humanity would stand, that it would protect its own, and that it would demand respect from the galaxy. The Council finally agreed to open formal channels of contact with humanity. Envoys would travel, treaties would be discussed, and cautious alliances might form. Fear had shifted into acknowledgement, and the first seeds of trust were planted. Commander Mark looked at his crew and said quietly, "We have changed the galaxy today. Remember this moment. They will respect us, and in time they will understand why humanity does not bow." The crew nodded, their hearts proud. They had not won a battle, yet they had achieved something greater. They had earned respect, and in the galaxy, respect was more powerful than any weapon. Far across the stars, the name Rhesus became known not as a threat, but as a symbol of humanity's rise. The first encounter had ended without war, yet the message was clear. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. Humanity had arrived, and the balance of power had shifted. The Titan-class warship Rhesus floated silently, patient, ready for whatever challenges the stars would bring. The first encounter was over, but a new chapter had begun. The galaxy would watch, and humanity would meet it with strength, wisdom, and unyielding spirit. To most of the galaxy, the outcome seemed certain. How could Earth stand against a power that had crushed empires before? To them, it was not a war, but an execution. But deep within human command centers, silent preparations were complete. The time for whispers was ending. Humanity would now answer the challenge. And the galaxy, watching closely, was about to learn that humans had never been as weak as they seemed. The stage was set. The Dominion was coming. The fleets were in motion, and the first clash of war was only moments away. The Thalor Armada arrived at Mars with terrifying force. Hundreds of warships formed tight formations, their armor glowing with shield energy. To the colonists below, the sky filled with black shapes blotting out the stars. Families huddled inside shelters, expecting fire to fall at any moment. The Thalor commander, Lord Vanar, spoke through every human channel. His voice was cold and confident. "This is your last chance. Bow to the Dominion and live. Refuse, and Mars will be the first to burn." For a moment, silence followed. Then a human voice answered, steady and calm. It came from Admiral Ross, the commander of the Human Defense Fleet. Mars stands free. Earth stands free. We are not afraid, the Thalor laughed. To them, this was foolish bravado. Their warships were larger, their weapons stronger, and their fleet had conquered countless systems. What could humans possibly do? With a gesture, Lord Vaynar ordered the attack. Thalor warships advanced, their cannons lighting the void. Explosions tore across Mars' orbit, striking decoy satellites and empty defense platforms. The colonists braced for disaster. But instead of chaos, something unexpected happened. Human ships moved. At first, the Thalor sneered. The human fleet was small, dozens of cruisers and frigates against hundreds of Dominion warships. Their designs looked old, simple compared to the massive Thalor dreadnoughts. Yet the way they moved was different. Human ships did not charge blindly. They slipped between Thalor formations with speed and precision. Every maneuver was sharp, every turn timed perfectly. They targeted weak points no other race would have noticed. Joint connections in armor plating exposed energy lines, vulnerable weapon turrets. One by one, Thalor ships sparked with sudden damage. A cruiser that had laughed off enemy fire for centuries was disabled by a single human strike to its reactor vents. Another dreadnought spun helplessly after its thrusters were shattered by railgun fire. The galaxy watched through hidden probes and relays. At first, reports were dismissed as errors. But soon the truth was undeniable. Humans were fighting like no one else. Their ships were smaller, but they adapted faster. Their weapons were fewer, but each shot mattered. Instead of wasting fire, they struck with precision, crippling ships without destroying them outright. It was not reckless courage, it was mastery. On Mars, the colonists who had expected death now cheered as enemy ships fell silent. Families who had hidden in fear stood by windows, watching human ships dart through the void with impossible skill. Lord Vaynar grew furious. He sent more ships forward, determined to crush the resistance. But the harder the Thalor pushed, the more humans adapted. Every failed attack taught them something new. Every maneuver grew sharper. Admiral Ross gave orders in a calm voice. His commanders listened, but they also acted with freedom. Unlike the Dominion, where every captain waited for permission, human captains were trained to think for themselves. The result was chaos for the Thalor, chaos that humans turned into advantage. Within hours, what should have been a swift victory became a disaster for the Dominion. Dozens of their ships drifted powerless. Others fled to regroup. Not a single human world had fallen. The galaxy could hardly believe it. Reports spread across trade routes carrying the same shocking message. Humans had stood against the Thalor and lived. More than that, they had struck back. For the first time in centuries, the Dominion had been forced to retreat. Across alien worlds, leaders gathered in hushed meetings. They replayed the battle footage again and again. How had humans done this? Their ships were not as advanced, their fleet not as large. And yet, they had fought with skill that no empire could match. Whispers turned to fear. If this was only the beginning, what else were humans hiding? Back on Earth, the victory was met with quiet pride. There were no grand parades, no loud declarations. Families embraced, colonies rebuilt, and soldiers prepared for the next strike. Humanity did not believe the war was over. They knew the Thalor would return, stronger than before. But for now, they had shown the galaxy something it could not ignore. Humans were not harmless explorers. They were not weak traders. They were fighters, disciplined and precise, carrying a strength born from centuries of struggle. And though the galaxy had only seen the surface of human power, the silence that followed was filled with one clear truth. Humanity had just begun to fight. The Thalor Dominion's retreat from Mars shook the galaxy. Never before had their fleets been pushed back by what they considered a young and untested race. Across the stars, leaders demanded reports. Analysts replayed the battle, and citizens whispered about humans with new respect and fear. But the truth was far larger than anyone suspected. The battle at Mars had shown only the surface of human strength. What the galaxy did not know was that humanity had prepared for this moment for generations. They had built not just ships and defenses, but an entire hidden arsenal across their worlds. While other empires displayed their fleets in grand parades, humanity kept theirs quiet. While the Thalor boasted of their victories, Earth built in silence. Behind deserts, beneath oceans, and under ice shelves, Weapons slept in secret. Entire fleets were hidden in asteroid fields, their hulls coated with stealth layers that absorbed detection signals. Massive rail cannons were buried on Earth and Mars, their barrels stretching for kilometers, capable of firing projectiles at speeds no shield could withstand. Even drones, thousands upon thousands of them, were hidden in deep storage bays. They were small, fast, and linked together through human-controlled networks. Alone, a drone was nothing. Together, they became a storm, able to swarm enemy fleets and tear them apart piece by piece. Few outsiders had ever seen these weapons. Those who visited Earth noticed only the surface, cities filled with life, music, and trade. They never realized that beneath every smiling street was a bunker, every peaceful colony built with defenses disguised as ordinary structures. Humanity's kindness had always been real, but so was their caution. Admiral Ross knew why. Humanity's history had been one of endless struggle. Wars on Earth, disasters in space, and harsh environments on distant colonies had all taught the same lesson. Peace could not survive without preparation. Where other empires had grown proud and careless, humans remembered the cost of weakness now. With the Dominion threatening everything they had built, humanity's true power began to rise from the shadows. When the Thalor regrouped and prepared for a second strike, scouts returned with unsettling reports. Human defense stations that had seemed empty before now bristled with weapons. Energy signatures from hidden fleets suddenly appeared across the system. Strange signals were detected near the asteroid belt. But before Thalor probes could confirm, they vanished without trace. It was as if Earth had unfolded an entirely new face overnight. The galaxy's spies were baffled. How had humanity built so much without anyone noticing? The answer was simple. They had never bragged about it. Where others sought glory through displays of might, humans valued survival. Their fleets were never meant for parades. They were meant for war. Small civilizations, long oppressed by larger empires, began to feel a spark of hope. If humanity could resist the Dominion, perhaps they could change the balance of power. For the first time, many looked to Earth not just as traders or allies, but as protectors. Inside Dominion command halls, anger grew. Lord Vanar could not accept that his powerful fleet had been stopped. He demanded new offensives larger than before, convinced that humans had merely been lucky. But other Thalor commanders felt unease. The footage of human precision strikes, the sudden appearance of hidden weapons, and the silence of their enemies after battle all hinted at something more. One commander asked the question none wanted to face. What if humans are stronger than they let us believe? Back on Earth, humanity prepared without hesitation. Engineers activated drone swarms for the first time in decades. Technicians uncovered the rail cannons buried under ice, calibrating them for war. Colonies drilled evacuation routes and defenses with calm discipline. Children were taught not only safety but the importance of resilience. And above it all, human fleets began to move. Silent ships emerged from the asteroid belt, their hulls marked with no insignia, their weapons glowing faintly in the dark. To an outsider, they looked like shadows, but to Admiral Ross and his commanders, they were the heart of humanity's true strength. The galaxy had seen only whispers of human courage at Mars. Now, it began to glimpse the reality of a race that had never forgotten survival. The hidden arsenal was not just machines and weapons. It was the spirit of humanity itself, forged through centuries of hardship and carried across the stars. The Dominion thought they were facing traitors, settlers, and dreamers. But what stood before them now were warriors of patience, guardians who had prepared in silence for this very moment. The stage of war was no longer balanced. Humanity had revealed part of its hand, and the galaxy could not look away. The question was no longer whether humans could fight. It was how far they were willing to go to protect their freedom. And as fleets gathered and weapons awakened, one truth became clear. Humanity was not the weakest voice in the galaxy. They were the storm waiting to be unleashed. The second great clash came not at Mars, but in the cold void near Jupiter. The Thalor Dominion returned with an even larger fleet, determined to erase the shame of their earlier retreat. Their ships filled the system like a storm cloud, dark and endless, their weapons glowing with deadly light. The Thalor commanders expected fear. They believed humanity would retreat, hide behind colonies, or scatter across space. Instead, the humans met them head-on. Admiral Ross stood in the command center of the flagship Horizon, his calm gaze fixed on the battle map. Around him, officers reported enemy positions, weapon charges, and ship movements. Yet Ross did not panic. He gave short, precise orders, his voice steady. Hold formation. Let them come to us. The Thaler advanced in rigid lines, their discipline unshaken. Their war doctrine was simple. Overwhelm with size, crush with firepower, and allow no weakness. Against most enemies, it had always worked. But against humans, it began to break apart. As the Thaler unleashed their first volleys, human ships scattered into sudden, unpredictable maneuvers. They did not move like machines, but like living creatures. Their formation shifted in seconds, breaking apart and reforming in patterns no Thaler strategist had seen before. The first human counterstrike came from the asteroid belt. Hidden cannons buried in rock for decades powered up and unleashed devastating blasts. Massive slugs of metal tore through space at speeds no shield could resist, striking the largest Dominion warships. One dreadnought, proud and ancient, split apart in seconds. Before the Thaler could react, swarms of drones launched from hidden bays across the system. Tiny machines, thousands strong, filled the void like a metallic storm. They darted between enemy ships, overwhelming point defense guns. They did not fight randomly. They fought with human coordination, guided by commanders who adapted every second. The Dominion ships faltered. Their heavy weapons were built to crush large opponents, not endless swarms of fast-moving drones. The galaxy watched in awe as smaller human creations brought down mighty warships piece by piece. Admiral Ross did not aim for destruction alone. His strategy was different from the Thaler. Where the Dominion sought to annihilate, humanity sought control. Human strikes disabled enemy thrusters, cracked communication relays, and cut off supply chains. They crippled ships instead of turning them into debris. This allowed humans to outmaneuver their enemy again and again. To alien observers, it was a revelation. No other empire fought with such adaptability. The Thaler shouted orders through strict chains of command, but human captains acted freely. They adjusted to each moment, turning mistakes into opportunities. When one ship was damaged, others filled the gap instantly. When enemy tactics changed, humans shifted before the Thaler could even react. It was like watching water flow around stone, unstoppable and patient. The battle stretched into hours. At first, the Thaler still believed victory was possible, but as more ships were disabled, as more drones swarmed their lines, doubt spread. Lord Vanar himself barked orders, demanding his fleet hold formation, but discipline could not stop chaos. At one critical moment, the Horizon led a daring maneuver. Human ships feigned retreat, drawing Dominion warships into pursuit. Then, from behind Jupiter's shadow, hidden cruisers emerged, striking at the exposed rear of the Thaler fleet. The trap closed, and entire Dominion squadrons found themselves surrounded. The silence in alien council halls across the galaxy was heavy. They watched the reports come in, unable to deny what they saw. Humans were not only resisting, they were winning. For the first time in centuries, the Dominion found itself pushed back not by a coalition of powers, but by a single race that had been underestimated by all. When the battle finally ended, the void near Jupiter was filled with drifting wreckage. Dozens of Thaler warships lay powerless, their crews forced to retreat or surrender. Human losses were real but far lighter than expected. The colonies were safe and the fleet still stood strong. On Earth, news of the victory spread quickly. Families cheered, but their pride was quiet. They did not boast of conquest, only of survival. Children in schools learned that courage and unity had saved their worlds. Farmers on Mars returned to their crops, knowing their skies were safe for another day. In the galaxy at large, the silence deepened. No one laughed at humanity anymore. Leaders of smaller civilizations secretly reached out to Earth, seeking alliances. Even the great powers who had once mocked humans now studied their tactics, wondering how such a young race had achieved what others could not. The Thaler Dominion, once feared without question, now faced doubt from within. Their commanders whispered among themselves, asking if humanity had always been stronger than they pretended. Lord Vanar raged at these whispers, but even he could not ignore the truth. Humanity had turned the tide, and though the war was not yet over, one fact had become clear to every corner of the galaxy. Humans would not be conquered. They had proven themselves in battle, and their hidden strength was now undeniable. The galaxy had fallen silent before. Now that silence grew heavier, for it carried the weight of fear and respect. Humanity had risen, and nothing would ever be the same again. The galaxy had never been so quiet. The Thaler Dominion, once proud and feared across countless star systems, had retreated in confusion. Their fleets, once symbols of absolute power, now floated damaged and scattered, forced to regroup and lick their wounds. Across the stars, observers whispered of humans with a mix of awe and disbelief. Humanity had not only defended its worlds, but had struck in ways that no one could have imagined. They had fought not just with weapons, but with intelligence, patience, and discipline. The victories at Mars and near Jupiter had shattered the Thalers' confidence. More than that, they had sent a message to every empire and colony: the humans could not be underestimated. On Earth, Admiral Ross stood on the bridge of the flagship Horizon, looking out at the stars. His fleet remained ready, not for glory, but for the possibility of another attack. Even in victory, humans prepared for what might come next. The galaxy did not know it, but humanity's true strength was not in the weapons or fleets alone. It was in their unity and the quiet determination of millions across Earth and its colonies. For the first time, smaller civilizations felt hope. Worlds that had been crushed by empires now looked toward humanity, not just for protection, but as an example. Diplomats sent messages, traders offered support, and scholars studied human strategy. Even empires that had never interacted with humans began to reconsider their assumptions. The Thaler, meanwhile, faced internal unrest. Their commanders debated who had failed and why. Rumors spread that humans had secret fleets, hidden weapons, and tactics beyond comprehension. Some of their leaders whispered fears aloud. What if humanity's power continued to grow? What if this was only the beginning? These questions could not be answered, and the uncertainty made the Dominion cautious for the first time in centuries. On Mars, citizens celebrated quietly. Families reunited after the battles. Farmers tended to fields, and children ran through the streets laughing despite the memories of fear. Humanity did not celebrate loudly or with grand displays of conquest. Instead, they honored each other quietly, understanding that true victory was survival and preparedness, not pride or domination. In orbital stations and deep space colonies, human commanders shared lessons. Each fleet, each base, each unit analyzed every move in the battles, preparing for the day when peace might again be threatened. Humanity had fought not to conquer but to defend, and they had shown that defense could be both brilliant and decisive. The galaxy took notice. Trade routes reopened slowly, cautiously. Empires sent observers rather than armies. Small civilizations sent envoys, hoping to learn from Earth rather than compete with it. Humanity's victories had shifted the balance of power without them ever seeking to dominate. Even the Thaler could not ignore the change. Their fleets now moved with restraint. Every new engagement was met with caution. Where once they had been aggressive and arrogant, they were now measured, aware that a single miscalculation could lead to disaster. For humans, the silence across the galaxy was both victory and warning. They had proven that strength could be concealed, that preparation could outweigh arrogance, and that courage and strategy together could overcome even the most powerful foes. Yet they knew the galaxy was not entirely safe. The Dominion might regroup. Other empires might test their resolve. Humanity remained vigilant. Admiral Ross addressed his fleet in a calm voice. "We have defended our homes. We have protected our people. But this is not the end. The galaxy watches us now. We must remain ready, disciplined, and united. Our strength is not just in our weapons, but in every human who stands for freedom and peace." Across the stars, intelligence officers and spies recorded every word. They knew that humans had done something remarkable. Not only had they survived, they had changed the way the galaxy understood power. The human way was different, steady, precise, and unpredictable. It was a style of strength that no empire had anticipated. As the silence settled, the galaxy felt a new tension. It was not fear alone, but a deep respect. No race would underestimate humanity again. No empire would approach lightly. And every corner of space now had to consider the possibility that the humans were more than they seemed. And yet, for all the whispers and awe, humanity returned to its daily life. Children played, engineers built, and scientists explored new stars. The horizon sailed quietly among the planets, a reminder of what had been achieved. Humans had fought and won, but they had not sought glory. Their victories were measured, and their minds already turned to the future. The silence of the galaxy was a powerful one. It was not filled with celebration or triumph, but with understanding. Every species now knew that Earth and its colonies could defend themselves. They knew that the humans had something no one could easily take: the will to fight, the intelligence to adapt, and the unity to protect what they loved. In that quiet, in the calm after fire and chaos, the galaxy realized a truth it could not ignore. Humanity had arrived not as a weak race, not as explorers or traders alone, but as a force that demanded attention. The Thalor would never forget, and the stars themselves seemed to pause, waiting for what humans would do next. The galaxy was no longer the same. Silence had fallen after humanity's victories, but it was a silence filled with awareness. Every empire, every coalition, every independent system now knew that humans were a force to be reckoned with. The days when Earth could be ignored were over. Admiral Ross stood on the bridge of the flagship horizon looking at the stars. The battles had been won, but he knew the real work was only beginning. Humanity's mission was no longer just survival. It was shaping the future of a galaxy that had underestimated them for too long. Across Earth and its colonies, humans celebrated quietly. There were no triumphal parades, no banners declaring dominance. Families reunited, farmers returned to their work, and children played in safety. Humanity understood that true strength was not shown in conquest, but in protection, in discipline, and in the ability to remain united. Smaller civilizations, long oppressed by larger empires, began to approach Earth openly. They sent envoys seeking advice, protection, and cooperation. Human diplomats welcomed them with patience and fairness, forging alliances that were based on mutual respect rather than fear. These alliances were new, and they shifted the balance of power across the galaxy without any human empire forcing it. Even the Thaler Dominion, the greatest power humanity had faced, moved with caution. Their fleets were repaired and reorganized, but no commander dared act without careful calculation. Their arrogance had been replaced by respect and wariness. They had learned that humans were not only clever and resilient, but also unpredictable. Across the stars, traders and scholars shared stories of the battles. Humanity's strategy became a subject of study in academies and command centers. Leaders of distant systems wondered how a young species could outmaneuver fleets that had dominated the galaxy for centuries. The answer was simple. Humans fought not only with strength but with intelligence, unity, and the courage to take risks while thinking ahead. Back on Mars, colonies thrived. Orbital stations became hubs of innovation. Scientists and engineers worked together to expand human knowledge, exploring distant stars and developing new technology. The battles had shown that humanity could defend itself, but they had also sparked a desire to reach further, to prepare for whatever challenges the galaxy might bring in the future. In the command centers of Earth, Admiral Ross addressed his officers. "We have shown the galaxy that humans cannot be conquered, but our victories are not the end. They are the beginning of a new era. Our strength is in every human who believes in freedom, in cooperation, and in the courage to defend what we value. We must continue to grow, learn, and protect. Only then can we shape a galaxy that values peace and fairness over fear and domination." His words were not meant for glory. They were a message of responsibility. Humanity had power now, but power without wisdom could lead to disaster. They had learned the value of preparation, strategy, and unity in battle. Now they would use that same wisdom to guide their place among the stars. The galaxy watched in quiet amazement. Empires that had once mocked humans now sought treaties. Independent systems offered resources and knowledge. Smaller races looked to Earth not as a conqueror, but as a protector and partner. Humanity's victories had changed the rules. The galaxy had been forced to respect a new standard of power, one that combined courage, discipline, and compassion. Even the children who played on the streets of Mars understood that their lives were shaped by something greater than themselves. They had inherited a world defended by millions, a galaxy that would never again treat humanity lightly. They had inherited hope, opportunity, and the responsibility to continue what had been built. The silence of the galaxy was powerful. It was not filled with fear alone, but with realization. Every species now understood that humans had risen, not to conquer, but to defend, to guide, and to ensure that peace could exist in a universe that had long been ruled by fear. As the horizon sailed among the planets, a fleet of human ships moved in formation, not for war, but as a signal. They were ready to respond to any threat, but they were also ready to build, explore, and cooperate. The galaxy had seen the strength of humanity, and it knew that strength was just the beginning. Humanity had arrived as explorers and traders, as settlers and dreamers. Now they stood as guardians and leaders, shaping the stars with wisdom, courage, and unity. The galaxy had fallen silent before, but now it listened, and in that listening, a new order was forming. A galaxy where humans would play a central role in guiding, protecting, and inspiring every race that called the stars home. The stars no longer belonged to fear alone. They belonged to those who could rise with intelligence, courage, and the quiet strength of humanity. And the galaxy would never forget the day humans unveiled their true power and claimed their place among the stars.